Welcome back to This Week in Indies. You know, one of the most important aspects to character creation is getting inside their head and conveying their most inner thoughts and inner feelings. And when you're that third person, POV, conveying that inner monologue, it is paramount to keeping the reader's attention. So how do we take that leap and stick that landing? We will discuss that and more with our roundtable discussion panel. Then Seal Cannon will be along with indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Stardust by Neil Gaiman. And finally, in the 5-minute drill, we have 10 questions to torture our wonderful guests with yet again. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to chat about these things and more as we welcome you to another episode of This Week in Indies with your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies. I'm not even going to try to manipulate cameras or anything like that. Had enough audio issues already this morning. So you can see the whole panel. I won't put myself big on screen, but I am live from Slamdance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, where it is finally snowing. Actually, it's raining right now because it's too hot to snow. But it was snowing overnight, which was nice. But it took 4 days of me being here for it finally to come down. But I'm really happy to be here. And unfortunately, you might hear a lot of heavy traffic and people talking. I'm in a hallway and in the festival, and unfortunately, this is the only way that my panelists can hear me. So we're just going to go with it, and hopefully everybody can be okay. I hope the audience can hear me fine. Let us know if you can't. But anyway, I am here, and we are going to talk a little bit about inner voice, but also today we are doing a very special thing where we are highlighting a specific crowdfunding campaign, and that honor, the first one, belongs to the awesome Juliet Rose, who's here with us. Can you all see the graphic? Because I can't see it.
No.
Is it not coming up?
Yeah. Now I can.
Did it come up there?
Yep.
I don't know why I can't see it on my screen, but if you all can see it, that's all that matters. But Juliet, why don't you? There you go. See, there's quite a delay here, so I apologize. Now I see it. All right. So Juliet, tell us a little bit about your Indiegogo campaign and where you're at, some of the perks, and all those wonderful things.
Sure. Yeah. So my publishing company is putting out its first anthology this year, which is Final Passenger. And the theme is kind of speculative horror. Asked the authors submitted these some transportation and some passenger didn't have to be human. So really great reason. We have in campaign kind of stuff that goes into put out.
We're losing you.
You're losing?
Yep, you're pixelating pretty bad.
Yeah, I was getting the robot voice for a little bit. I thought it was just me.
No, I have a robot voice.
That's better.
Hold on, I'm putting on my hotspot, so there might be a slight delay for a second as I switch over from that for my internet.
Nothing like live feeds, huh?
Dead air
Yeah,
on live radio or live media.
For some reason, my hotspot's not pulling up.
Sorry,
Can you hear
it's
me okay?
very hard for me to hear anybody. So
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it's just not wanting to pull my hotspot up. Oh, there we go. I see it on my. Okay,
All
can you
right.
hear me?
Now, yep, you're good.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm switching over to my hotspot, so I'll go back through that. I'm not sure what you
Okay.
heard and what you didn't heard.
So start from the beginning
Yeah.
for it. Because no, I don't think we heard any of it.
Okay, so my publishing house is putting out its first anthology this year called Final Passenger. And this is basically an anthology of stories that contain usually some form of transportation and a passenger. It doesn't have to be human. It is speculative horror, so it's gone all over the place. We have already received most of the stories we're including in the anthology. So now we're switching gears and focusing on our crowdfunding campaign. Which will raise money to pay for editing, pay the authors, whatever goes into publishing a book. And there are multiple tiers. We have anything from like the $10 tier where you can get a free ebook of this book once it comes out in May, all the way up to a $100 tier, which includes things like a tote bag and a keychain and a little Grim Reaper crocheted plush. Lots of fun things on there. So I think it's got about another 2 weeks left of this campaign for us to try to meet our goal.
Awesome. What are some of the perks that people can get when they pledge?
So it's kind of a neat thing we're doing with the anthology too. My daughter, as an adult, she is an artist, and she's actually drawing an image for each story, and we're going to actually have those as prints as some of the perks that we have. So
ideally, what kind of space do they need?
The authors will also get a copy of that with the book. But yeah, so that's one of the perks. We have keychains, bookmarks, stickers. We have tote bags. We have books. We have a crocheted Grim Reaper plush. We have a lot of things that we're doing for perks for this fundraiser.
All right. Well, everybody, go check it out. I have the link in the comment section or in the description for everybody to check out. And thanks, Juliet. Go contribute. Let's help an indie get published, get publishing out there, and all that wonderful stuff. All right. So everybody, please do that, and we'll keep on doing the campaign thing here, and get more out there for more people to see, and hopefully there'll be some things that you all will want to contribute to. That being said, we are now going to talk a little bit about inner voice as the outer voices here dominate the hallway. And I apologize for that, everybody. I wish there was a better way, but it's just not happening. So let's go around the table and have everybody introduce themselves. Ariel, we'll start with you, and we'll work our way down. So Ariel, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ariel Dawn. Some people may know me as the author behind the series Monsters of Ashwood, Shifters of Starfall Creek, or Ava Crowley Vampire Slayer, and I write mostly paranormal romance, monster romance, and urban fantasy.
All right, AJ.
I'm AJ Mulliken. I write lots of romance, just like Ariel, only mine's a little broader. I do a little bit of every combination of people and every kind of contemporary, paranormal, whatever I can get my hands into. Lots of fun, steamy stuff. And I write with her too.
Yes, we do.
Nice. All right, Jim.
I'm Jim Nettles. I write a lot of different stuff: science fiction, urban fantasy, bit of horror, bit of this, that, and the other. Do a bunch of nonfiction. Do a lot of business stuff for creatives. One of the founders over at the Continual Convention where we do a bunch of programming, and a bunch of other stuff. And everybody's going to be surprised if I actually have an inner monologue. So,
All right, Juliet.
Hey, it's me again. Okay, so I am a cross-genre author. I write anything from contemporary fiction with some social issues and romance weaved in, all the way to horror. I've won 43 awards for my 9 current books that are out now, and I am releasing my 10th next month.
Awesome. All right. So I wanted to talk about this topic because I did a lot of reading this past year, and nearly almost every single book that was written in third person had some kind of italic inner monologue, and it struck me as interesting. I know it's not a new thing, I know that it's not something that is, you know, it's not passe or anything like that. It's not a cliche or anything like that, but it has been more prominent lately, and I'm curious how people are approaching that aspect of it. And is that something that you consider, something that you work on very, very much? Is that something that you need to have in what you're writing? Do you feel like the inner monologue is an important asset to your writing toolbox?
I think so, especially if you're using third person, because with first person, you've got the inner monologue right there. That's the narrative. With third person, though, in order to get inside the character's head, you have to kind of use that inner monologue to be able to convey what they're thinking, because you're not the person who's speaking, so to speak. I had a little interesting issue with that with my Abnormal series, because it's in third person and there's telepathy involved. So my original publisher had to get kind of creative with the formatting to be able to distinguish the inner monologue versus telepathy versus thoughts that the person was hearing. So it got a little, we had to do italics and brackets and bold print and kind of like make it different so that you could differentiate the inner monologue from the actual thoughts that they were hearing.
I'm going to jump on that and say I totally agree with that. I tended, when I started writing, I tended to do more third person. So immediately I jumped to that inner monologue of putting it in italics and trying to get that feeling and those thoughts across, especially because with how I write, I tend to always have my characters kind of doing one thing that's completely in contrast to what they're thinking. Which I kind of shifted a little bit more towards first person because that's obviously a little bit easier. But I do still write in third, and I do still use the inner monologue that way quite frequently. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it, again, it's like any other answer, is it depends. I mean, it depends on the story, depends on the characters, depends on what you're doing. But I mean, fundamentally, you've got, at some point, you've got to have more than what just they're saying or doing. There's got to be a thought behind it, or it's that motivation, because it's that, and especially if not only about the point of view, first and third person, but also there's a little bit of a different play between if you're in present tense and past tense, to me, right? Mm-hmm. Because that notion of past tense has a little bit more of that notion of memory to it. It has a little bit more of that notion of you can be a little less reliable a narrator even in first person as to what's in your head if it's in past tense, versus in present tense it's what's happening now. It's that sense of reality. So there's that time of that monologue coming in and going, should I really say that? Should I really do that? I don't really have one of those, but I mean, characters at least should have those, right? It's not every word needs to come out of their mouth. Not every thought needs to translate to an action. Sometimes it needs to be that thing to show and say, is this really a good idea? Or is, that notion of, does somebody like me? Do they not? It's those, interferes and doubts and things that show if there's incongruity between your actions and what you're saying and doing and those inner thoughts. It's got to be the way to reveal it.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I think that we've all seen, especially like in movies, you see it more than you see it necessarily in books in third person, where they don't give you the inner monologue and there's like a flatness to that character because you don't really know what their motivations are, what's going on in their head. So I think it's really important to show that, so that there's like that depth of character when you're writing in third person, which I pretty much exclusively write in.
All right. Sorry, I'm using my phone, everybody, so you just have to bear with me when I hit things. All right, so Anita's here, Jessica's here. Hello to both of you. I'm curious about the editing process when it comes to inner monologue. Are you more careful about the way you edit that, or is it more of that comes in the edit, you tend to add more inner monologue? Or do you tend to delete more inner monologue? Which direction do you tend to go when it comes to editing your work?
I'll start. I think just in general, in editing, I always end up adding more, especially with the inner monologue, because a lot of times just with my writing process, I have to get everything out first and then just go back and kind of like polish it up later. So a lot of times in editing, I go back to those inner monologues and I'm changing things, or I'm adding stuff in there with, maybe some pauses, some action, just to kind of hit those notes and get those thoughts across in contrast with the actions.
Yeah, I tend to write most of what I'm doing as I go. So my editing, I don't change a whole lot. It's mostly fixing the little grammar issues and things like that. But yeah, sometimes you have to add in, well, this seems a little weird without knowing what the character's thinking. So let's throw a little thought or two in here, or yeah, this seems like a little bit much exposition with this. So let's dial it back a bit. It just depends really on how the story's going.
A lot of the time, that inner monologue and the exposition for me comes because I put a note that says, figure this out here. And it's that notion of, I don't need to say something, I don't need to do something, but you have to show that at least they're contemplating the bad choice they're about to make, or they're really reflecting on it in the moment. But again, for me, if it's present tense, unless they're in that I'm storming across the room, I'm really in conflict with myself. If it's because I'm so dialogue heavy, most of even those inner thoughts tend to be very short and present tense, versus past tense tends to be more reflective.
Yeah, when it comes to editing, Joe, you and I have talked about the editing. I don't really do a lot of kind of major rewrites or editing. So when I'm writing initially, I'm watching a movie and I'm kind of considering the character's thoughts and what they're going through. So that's a lot of times already incorporated in, because I'm transcribing what I'm seeing. So I don't really change a lot of inner monologue either way when I'm editing.
All right. Sorry, a class just left. A panel just let out, so the hallway's full of people and it's very loud in here. So I'm trying to lean in and listen to you all talk, but yeah, sorry, it's just one of those things. But yeah, as far as like utilizing inner monologue too, is there a rule that you follow? Is there something that you adhere to when it comes to inner monologues? Because I can imagine there is a time when you feel like you've utilized it too much, or that it is not, working for what you're trying to do. So is there something that you guys do that, leads to what you're trying to do with what you're trying to write?
I try to keep it to a minimum. I feel like if you put too much inner monologue into a story, it kind of bogs it down. So I try to keep it to accenting what I'm doing as opposed to telling the story through inner monologue. And I think that that tends to lend to better flow when you're considering it as an accent to the story than telling the story through that.
I think the hardest part for me is kind of, and AJ touched on this a little bit earlier, like when, especially because I write a lot of monsters, I write a lot of paranormal romance, so I do have things like telespeak or, stuff like that. Mixing that with your inner monologue and finding some way to kind of differentiate the two, especially in terms of like formatting. Because most of the inner dialogue that I do is in italics, and so is, like would be like shift speak or, made bond speak or whatever, stuff like that. So for me, I try to, my little rule is just kind of like to intone with the inner monologue, usually in conjunction with an action or some sort of pause to break it up so that it's not all kind of reading as the same, if that makes sense.
I'd go with, so right now I'm doing some short story stuff. I've got a collection coming out that's both reprints as well as some new stuff, and I'm doing some rewrites. And there's a genre thing here to it too as well. I'm working on a couple of hard horror pieces that are much more about the person in the situation they're in and that introspection. So it's a tremendous amount of that inner voice, that inner monologue, that sitting in the darkness, that sort of a moment. And in short pieces, you can kind of get away with more of that. It for me, the longer the piece is, like if I get in a novella length, it becomes you have those moments because you can pack a lot into those moments of introspection without doing a tremendous amount of exposition. And then longer novels and things like that, it tends to be seasoning. So that's kind of what I've seen about my own writing.
Yeah, and I think that it's all about balance ultimately. How we balance anything else in the story as well, dialogue, action. So I think when you're getting into like inner monologue or inner thoughts of your character in that third person, you want to definitely have some balance of adding action in, and action can show those inner thoughts as well. If somebody's frustrated, they pound their fist against the wall, it's the same as them having that inner monologue of being frustrated. So I think it's just really balancing it out so nothing becomes too heavy for the reader.
Has utilizing inner monologue ever changed anything for you? Have you utilized it in a way where you decide, you know what, I was going to write like a dialogue scene to kind of do some transitioning here or do something that moves the story forward, but then this inner monologue works, so I'm going to just stick with that? Has that ever happened to any of you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure
Great.
at some point. It's hard to...
We're not going to elaborate. We just all said yes, so we can move on now.
Yeah.
Well, like right now, I've got a piece I'm working on, one of the ones I'm doing rewrites in, that I'm actually stripping down some of the extraneous dialogue in this back and forth and adding in a bit more of that inner dialogue on both parts to sort of emphasize how both of them are lying to each other. It's that inner thought and then what they're saying and what they're doing. And all three of them are different. It's that notion of what's in my head, the body language, and what's actually coming out of their mouths to each other. You have no idea, even by the time you're done with it, which one is the truth, even with their own inner thoughts back and forth. And that's a scene I've been working on and playing with, which has really been interesting. And it's been one of those things I've lost track of who's lying to who. And I'm having to go back and make notes because it actually impacts stuff down towards the end of it. I'm having to rewrite that, but that's actually been a fun little exercise I'm going through right now. And should be doing some of it this afternoon. We'll see if that happens.
As I agree with Jim. Ultimately, I think it allows another layer versus instead of. So, what characters are saying while they're thinking something different in their mind gives you a better picture into really their state or what their true intent is versus what they're doing or saying.
All right. Well, I'm sure you all can hear my inner monologue right now.
It's all 4-letter words.
If I could
hear.
write
Yeah,
it would.
I've given this inner monologue. If it helps, I'll be your inner monologue at the moment. I'll be your narrator. All right.
Yeah. So, as far as like the writing aspect of it goes, and creating the italics and the thoughts and everything to that nature, I wonder. I know we talked about is it too much, but can you fall into a trap of cliches with utilizing the inner monologue, and how do you avoid that? Because I got to imagine sometimes it is to a point where you look at it and you go, am I, like Julia said, there's got to be a balance. Am I really balancing it the right way? Is that something that you look at, and how do you figure that out?
I think it's very tricky. You've got to kind of watch because the balance. You can think, oh, well, this is how my brain works. This is how my brain thinks. So this is how my character's brain must think. But not everybody's got that inner monologue, and not everybody thinks in long passages. So you can't just put like a whole chapter of inner monologue, 'cause it's going to be really weird and clunky, and it's not going to flow right to everybody, because not everybody has that. I mean, some people don't even have any inner monologue, you know, and
That's a really good point.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that until a few years ago, and I'm like, well, what do you mean you don't have your own?
hmm
You can't hear yourself think. Like, what is that? And so you got to think, well, maybe this character doesn't have an inner monologue, so we can't have the notations of their thoughts in the script, because that's not how they think. So you got to kind of work with
Weirdos.
that as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I
I
was
know.
gonna say one of the
Go
questions
ahead.
I ask myself is it necessary? Like,
Mhm.
inner monologue should really serve a purpose, not just be kind of filler or lazy. Because sometimes it's easier to put the inner monologue than to have them work it out through dialogue or work it out through action. So a lot of times, if I'm doing inner monologue, I say to myself, "Is it necessary? If it's necessary, can I balance it out with other things?" Just a dream sequence can serve a purpose, but too many dream sequences, and the reader's like, "Dude, what's going on here?" So again, back to that balance.
And that's what I was going to say about, just kind of piggybacking on what else was said here, with people not having an inner monologue, and how, if you do have a character who doesn't have one, how do you convey, those thoughts? How do you get those across, if it's limited? So I think for me, because I tend to, because I am neurodivergent and I am ADHD, and I have, the rampant thoughts and the inner monologue that's constantly there. It is one of those things to be balanced, to really just kind of, I feel like it just gets back to, you have to know your character. You have to know, if they're more of an introvert or introspective, then they're going to have a bigger, longer monologue, inner monologue. But if they're not, then maybe those things are told through more of their body language or, their physical dialogue. So
And I think that is one of those ways you can take somebody that maybe is feeling a little cardboard because they don't say that much, they don't do that much, that they are that more introspective character, but you need them to be more involved. Those inner monologues from that character's point of view, even if it's just the small statements, can take them from being the sideways cardboard character to being, oh, that's our deep thinker. So when they pull the Silent Bob card out, and it's just here's the great moment of introspection for the entire story, they've at least got some of that setup leading to that point.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the indie connection here, and then I do have a couple more questions to ask the panel, but let's jump into the indie connection real quick. Give everybody a 5-minute breather, especially myself and my inner monologue needing it, and hopefully the traffic in here dissipates a little bit too, and I'll get back to being able to hear everybody and not only you hearing me, but hearing you as well. If you can't tell, I'm getting closer and closer to the screen because I'm trying to hear you all while, there's like 400 conversations going on in this hallway. Anyway, here's the indie connection, and we'll be right back, everybody.
Hey guys, C.L. Kanan here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Of course, this was also made into a fabulous movie. The book is even more fabulous, and it is so fabulous and unique that it was really hard to find indie books that were exactly like this. So most of the books that I'm going to be telling you about today have various elements from the book that I think fans of Stardust will enjoy, but they're not exactly like Stardust. Just because it's such a great and unique book, it was just really hard to find anything like it. But here are some books that I think you'll enjoy if you're a fan of Stardust. The first book I have for you is called Heart of the Forest by Anthea Sharp. Prince Kentry of Rain knows that if only he can capture the magical white heart, the creature will grant his heart's desire. Entering the depths of the dark wood, he chases his quarry down, only to become lost in a mythical forest. where he must fight for his life at the side of a moon-haired maiden who may hold the answer to his dreams. The second book I have for you is called Pirate Quest by D.A. Wells. Certainty for finding a cure for the curse is slipping away. Barty's only chance to save his family from a devastating curse lies in the past. Barty has always been fascinated with pirate legends and his ancestor Bartholomew Black Bart Roberts. He was one of the most successful pirates of his era, capturing and looting more ships than Blackbeard, Charles Vane, or Jack Rackham. But he never imagines that he'd be thrown into the past, that he'd have an opportunity to fight alongside the pirates, or that he'd have to fight so hard to keep the future of his family safe. At first, going back in time is just fun. Barty gets to show his heroism. He gets to live the life of a pirate. Then he discovers the curse. Cursed treasure. His grandpa is dying, and he realizes that this has something to do with what is going on within his own family. Their illnesses are tied to this curse. In order for Barty to save them, he must figure out where this originated from and how to stop it, before it's too late and he loses everything he holds dear. The second book I have for you is called Curse of the Winter Lord by Susan Shepard. A dark and dangerous adventure where a witch's curse makes the rules. Athena Landley is a simple girl from a simple town in the north. Stillhaven is the perfect place, until winter comes and never leaves. Trapped under a blanket of never-ending snow, Anthea and the townsfolk blame the eerie, magical wood nearby. When a dangerous stranger arrives and children start to go missing, Athena has no choice but to venture into the wood to save the town's soul, and her own. Deep in the wood lives the very handsome Lord Winter, an overly confident seasoned lord who wants nothing to do with Athena. But he's desperate to save his realm, and maybe Athena is the answer he is looking for. Together they confront the dark magic that binds him, the pain that has destroyed her, and grapple for the second chance they both desperately need. Fighting personal demons, spells, and their growing attraction, Lord Winter and Athena get more than they bargained for as the curse of winter tightens its icy grip. The fourth book I have for you is called In Sleep You Know by Christiane Knight. Even the grittiest blue-collar city has a spark of magic under the surface, but in Baltimore, graffiti holds secret messages and artists are the spellcasters. Abandoned buildings hide ancient beings, and at the local club, you might find yourself rubbing shoulders with menacing and otherworldly creatures. If you know how to look, of course. Merrick Moore is just a regular guy with dreams of making it big with his garage band, but not much else, until he crashes a party thrown by reclusive eccentrics. He gets more than he bargained for, new powers, a girlfriend who can visit him in his dreams, and a 7-year bond with a local fey court. When the mortal enemies of his new friends show up to his band's first gig, Merrick finds himself trying to prevent the start of a war that will have consequences for everyone, fey and human alike. And the last book I have for you is called Hero and a Halfling by William Tyler Davis. Adventure, excitement, Epic craves those things. In search of a father he's never known and of a magic he's sure he'll exhibit, once the timing is right, the young halfling moves to the local kingdom. There, Epic becomes the apprentice to the first wizard he meets, and the only wizard left in the city. For the first time in his life, the halfling makes friends, most notably with a beautiful half-elf girl named Myra. As a secret sect meet to plot the king's demise, a family of mountain trolls threatens the city. Epic seeks the opportunity to do something, well, epic. He must learn magic, he must save the girl, and he must protect the kingdom before it falls into the wrong hands. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
And as always, thanks to CL Cannon for that wonderful Indie Connection. We really appreciate it. And go check out those books. I didn't put the links in there yet, but I will get those in there today. Sorry about that. It's been a crazy weekend, to say the least. I moved down the hallway. I'm like literally in the staircase right now, holding my phone as we're talking. And as soon as like the Indie Connection, it was super quiet. Like I heard the whole thing and I was like, oh, cool, right? And as soon as it was about to end, like 400 people just walked right through here. I was like, I can't win today. It's just not going to happen, no matter where I'm standing, where I'm at. But anyway, thanks for bearing with us, everybody. Well, thanks for bearing with me. Everybody else is doing great, but I apologize for for my lack of doing well in this thing. I had good intentions, I promise you, but it just, sometimes it just doesn't work out. That's the beauty of live. Anyway, to continue the conversation a little bit about Inner Monologues, I am interested in the adage, right? Because right now I'm at a film festival, and there's a lot of talk about screenplay writing and a lot of writing in that vein. And a lot of what we've been talking about, and a lot of the interviews I've been talking about, is how people are showing things and not telling things, right? And that there's a lot of that goes along. And with Inner Monologues, it's kind of tough to manage the show aspect of it, because it is a thought. It is something that we're thinking about. It's a feeling we're having, right? So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the aspect of show not tell. Do you just kind of ignore it when you approach Inner Monologues? Do you try to utilize a show perspective to kind of utilize as an inner monologue? How do you handle the show not tell aspect of your writing, and knowing that you have to engage an audience, and inner monologues are going to be part of what you do, so that's going to be part of it, right? So
I think that's where it kind of comes in with being able to break things up, right? Because the inner dialogue is part of the show. It's in conjunction with something else. It's in conjunction with an action. It's in conjunction with something they're saying, which they're thinking the opposite of. So I feel like, for me at least, I view them as like two parts of the same equation. They just kind of go together to illustrate that show, instead of, I feel like we're more, especially in the third person, right? Where it's, I think, a little bit more, because as we said earlier, like first person, you already get that. So I feel like that conjunction of both of them together, that makes it more show than tell, if that makes sense.
And yeah, I would agree with that, but I think that there's can be more to it than that, where part of that inner monologue is part of the show, because what you're showing is that person's inner thoughts, inner feelings, inner motivations. And so that then, when they take action, can be the thing that says, are they being true to themselves? Are they being true? Or are they deceiving the other person? Or if it's something like romance, right? It's the hesitancy. It's that all the inner doubts, fears, things like that before you try to connect with that other person. It's all the things that happen when you're trying to establish trust, when you're trying to create bonds, when there is even friction. Let's say you're working on in fantasy and you've got a whole cluster of people together, or you're doing a heist or something along those lines, where you've got people who are just in friction. That inner monologue can be the, why can't he just do things the easy way? Why does it always have to be the hard way? And that inner thought of, why does it just have to be this way? And then they go and take some weird convoluted step. It can be those moments that provide the seasoning and the salt to what somebody's actions, and the way they actually show you how they're acting on that thought. So that's where I think it's a difference of how you use it, to me.
Yeah, I think it's a layer. Like, I said before, I think that ultimately you don't want to lean too heavily on any one factor. You don't lean too heavily on dialogue. You don't want to lean too heavily on inner monologue or even action. You want to basically have it be a balance, between all of those aspects, so that it does become part of the show.
AJ, did you answer the question? I'm not sure if I heard you or not.
Everyone's got the same. It's kind of my own inner monologue was kind of running at this moment. But it's kind of the same thing. It's all about the balance. It's all about making sure you don't do too much of any one thing when you're doing it. So you definitely gotta watch how you utilize it, because you can overuse it really easily if you're not careful.
At the end of the day, inner monologues are an important part of an aspect of modern day writing, and I think if utilized correctly, they're very effective. Um, have you thought about, because I've noticed this too, that there are some people trying to be super clever with it, right, and try to utilize it in a manner which, um, I mean, Jim, you kind of alluded to it. You're trying to experiment with it a little bit, and I'm just curious if you've thought about an idea that the inner monologue might be utilized for, but it may take some work to get to. Have you, as I mean, I know Jim has already answered this question technically, but I'm curious for the other three of you if there's something you've been working on that the inner monologue is going to play a factor in, that you are utilizing differently than you've utilized it in the past.
It's mostly just the one series that I write in third person anymore. With romance, you kind of want to be in the moment. So I tend to write it in first person because you want to feel the emotions with the character when you're reading it. Third person is a little more distanced, so I don't write as much of that because I want my readers to kind of feel more immersed in the story than they would with the third person. But inner monologue can definitely help with that immersion. If you are using third person, it can definitely pull you in a little more if used correctly.
Yeah, and I'm currently writing the novel I'm writing now. Really puts the main character by himself or with a non-speaking 4-year-old child out in the national forest for a large part of the book. So there's not a lot of opportunity for dialogue because obviously he can't speak to the child. He's so he's got a lot of kind of like that inner monologue stuff type going. However, I wanted to make it somewhat unreliable because he is somebody that had suffered from alcoholism, and so some of his stuff he's lying to himself or he's fooling himself or remembering incorrectly. And I use that to kind of show his state that he's currently in.
I was gonna say I typically use a lot of inner dialogue just in general, whether I am writing third or first. But I am working on something right now where I'm trying to do a little bit more of like an unreliable narrator with that inner dialogue, which is something I haven't done before. So that's been kind of an interesting experiment for me. So it should be interesting to see how it turns out. So.
Well, talk about interesting experiments. Being live here in Park City has been that exactly. I'm utilizing the tools that I have at my disposal. And realizing that this was probably a bad idea to do it this way today. I'm going to spare you all of the 5-minute drill. I know you're all disappointed, but I just it's just not going to work. So we'll wrap it up pretty early here today. Apologize for everybody. And again, I can't be sorry enough. But hey, look, I wanted to try it. I tried it. Now I know. We'll figure it out for the next time. But that's the way it goes sometimes. That's the beauty of being live. But again, I couldn't have asked for a better panel to take this on and handle it. So thank you all for doing that. I really do appreciate it. You all made it worth it. So let's go around the room and give everybody a chance to find you and what you're doing out there. So we'll go the opposite direction this time. So Juliet, start us off, please.
Sure. So you can find me and my books through authorjulietrose.com. And then my publishing company is abovetheraincollective.com.
You can find me at jamespnettles.com. If you want to come find out about the workshop stuff, I have a new round kicking off February 3rd, whatever that Saturday is. We'll be doing a new round of live and virtual. If you want to find out about some of the shows and programming stuff we do, come on and swing by continualconvention.com or my podcast, which is creatingpros.com. And I feel sure that there's a couple of dozen other things flying around in there at the moment. But yeah, just swing by and say hi.
You can find me, AJ, at ajmulligan.com. You can find me, ajmulligan.com/author. All my social links are on there, my bio, and you can buy books online. You can go to Amazon and find me, search AJ Mulligan, surprise, surprise. Basically, you go there, look for me in one of those places with those names, and that's where you'll find me.
Basically everywhere. You can find me at ariel-dawn.com. You can also find me. I have books pretty much everywhere on Amazon. I've got books wide. And on social media, I am author Ariel Dawn, and on TikTok, I am less_than3. And that's pretty much where I'm at. So come say hey.
Awesome. Well, where I'm at is Park City, Utah, and live at Slamdance Film Festival. I'm really happy to be here, and it's been a wonderful experience. I'll tell you more about that down the road. I have probably at the end of this, I'll have like 26 interviews to put out. So you may not see me for a while. I may be in the editing cave and may never come out. But we'll see. I will do my best. I've got a lot of great stuff to show you all, and hopefully you'll enjoy that as we go along. But this is Go Indie now, so you know what to do. Subscribe, like, do all the wonderful things that you do. Thank you for joining us, and thank you again. Thank you to my panel for braving my disaster that was this. And thank you to all of you watching and commenting. We really appreciate it. And remember that it's always time to go indie now. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye.